I'm a fashion photographer. I'm based in New York City. My studio is on 20th and Park. Is that me making that noise? 20th and Park. Some of the fashion stuff that I've done, I've of course worked with a lot of great models like Claudia Schiffer. I've worked for Yves St Laurent in Paris. I lived in Milan and in Paris for several years as well, but I always kept my studio on 20th Street. So I worked for the house of Yves St Laurent in Paris. There's Mr. St Laurent himself. This is from the house of St Laurent again. This is from French Elle. It's from Interview magazine, Interview. This is from Marie Claire, English Marie Claire. This is GQ, of course, Tyson. This is English Marie Claire again. French Elle, of course, Cindy for Revlon. So I got to work with some really amazing models. It was such a blast. She was like, it's a great industry. I was like, this is so much fun. But one of the things that I found, I'm an artist, and I was always told by a fashion editor who the model of the moment was. I was told who was beautiful. As an artist, I didn't see beauty just on covers of magazines. I was always, so it would change each season. I'd have to change my idea of beauty each season to keep up with the various magazines that I was shooting with. And I just thought, this is really frustrating because I do see beauty everywhere. And I was leaving my studio one afternoon right after doing a big casting for French Elle. It was in New York. And I was doing this big shoot, and I was seeing every model in the world was like, they came into the studio where I saw every portfolio, and I was like, okay, this is wonderful, great. And I'm running out of the studio to run an errand, and waiting on the corner of Park Avenue and 20th for a bus was this young girl with white hair, pale skin. She had this genetic condition called albinism. This girl was so beautiful, yet I realized she had never been included in the beauty standard, and I got so excited that I was like, I have to take your photograph, you're amazing. But the bus came and she got on and took off, and I'm really glad, and I always say this because she was 12 years old and I would be in prison right now if that actually happened. So I continued right down to Barnes & Noble in Union Square to get any information I could on this gorgeous kid, like albinism, this is fantastic. And I started going down, I grabbed my first medical textbook that I ever looked at, and that's what I saw for albinism. And I thought, oh, this is really scary. And I saw a lot of these photographs on the bottom of kids with black bars across their eyes. I saw lots of sores and all these like cancers, and I'm thinking, oh, this is horrible. And then I started going, then I saw this bright red eye, the albino eyes with the title of this chapter, and I thought, wait, this kid didn't have bright red eyes. She had blue eyes. And this is, all of a sudden I'm seeing this, there's something wrong here. And then I started going through more and more looking at these medical textbooks, and it was so horrifying that I just put them away very quickly, started grabbing encyclopedias on albinism, and then found the freak albino family in the circus at the turn of the 20th century. I'm thinking, hey, this is awful. So I put those away. I started grabbing other journals and magazines and started finding all the negative movie references, from The Princess Bride, of course, to Powder, who had albinism because his mother was struck by lightning when she was pregnant, to, of course, the Da Vinci Code. The Da Vinci Code is the evil albino Silas driving around Paris at night shooting at people. Well, one of the first things I learned almost instantly when I started researching albinism was that there's a visual impairment associated with albinism. Most people have vision, but they're considered often legally blind. So certainly wouldn't be driving around Paris at night shooting at anything and expect to hit anything. So I'm thinking, this is terrible. So I found in my study, in my research, I found an organization called NOAA. NOAA is the National Organization for Albinism and Hypopigmentation. It's a support group for people living with this condition and their families. So I was like, oh, cool. So I called them up and said, hey, I'm a fashion photographer. Let's show the world the beauty of albinism. This is going to be amazing. They said, get lost. And I'm like, pretty persistent, being in New York for a really long time. I was like, I didn't understand, but they made it very clear to me early on in early days about their fear of exploitation, that every time a magazine article came out about somebody with albinism, it was always the story about a victim, or it was sensational or exploitative. Always negative, and that was consistent. And that was also consistent with what I found when I was trying to research albinism. So I said, well, I get that. I see that. This is why I'm calling you. Let's change that. So let's do something odd here. Let's form a non-traditional partnership. Fashion photographer, genetic support group will work together. You can work with me to make sure that I don't create something negative, that together we create something really powerful and positive. And they agreed, like, this is fantastic. It's going to be so exciting. So we're getting ready to start the first shoot. And in walks the first girl that I'm going to photograph. Her name is Christine. Christine's about 5'9", long white hair. She's stunning. She walks into my studio. I'm like so excited to meet her, but she walks in with her shoulders up like this, her head's down like this, and she walks in, no eye contact, one word after. She's like, hi. This kid has been teased every single day of her life. Every single day because of her difference. Teased in school so badly that she had zero self-esteem. And I'm thinking, there has to be something we can do. She's so vulnerable. What am I going to do with this gorgeous girl? I'm thinking, but just the day before I had photographed Cindy Crawford on the same set in my studio. So I thought, you know what, out of respect for this gorgeous kid, I'm going to photograph her like I did Cindy the day before. So the fan went on, the music went on, and I grabbed a mirror that was next to the set, and I held it up to Christine. I said, Christine, look at yourself. You're magnificent. And she looked in the mirror and like this, and she got it. She saw what I saw, and she went from this to that. It was extraordinary. And there she is. Like, she just exploded in front of it was incredible to see this transformation right in front of the lens. And I realized at that very moment that an ambassador for change was born on the set in my studio. This kid's going to change the way her world sees her community sees her, starting the very next day, because now she's empowered with a new sense of who she is. She's going to walk into school the next day, not like she normally does like this, but like this. She's fierce, she's amazing, and she's powerful with this new sense of who she is. I realized this is going to change everything. So I was very, very excited. So I continued photographing many people from the community, had a lot of the same experiences, insecurity, low self-esteem, but then this empowerment happened over and over and over again. So I brought these photographs to Life magazine, and Life magazine ran them in a cover story entitled Redefining Beauty. And this is actually Cheryl. Cheryl was the president of NOAA at the time. It was a 5-page spread. We used quotes from some of the kids and the adults that we photographed. But I had so many, it was a lot, everybody saw this. This came out 15 years ago. This year, it was in June, 15 years ago. So, but it reached a lot of people and around the world. I have a lot of contacts with many different magazines internationally because of the work that I was doing editorially, that I actually used some of the images from the shoots in other magazines as well. So this is a magazine in the UK, in Australia. We did a Miu Miu sunglass campaign because a lot of kids with albinism have a certain photophobia or light sensitivity. So I thought, how perfect to shoot an ad campaign and a sunglass campaign on these gorgeous kids. So this is Lauren and her friends that were part of this exhibition and this editorial. People magazine did a great big piece on positive exposure. So people started seeing all these great stories everywhere, and I started traveling around the world because people were calling me saying, "Can you come to Australia? Because we want to start our first Albinism Society of Australia." Can you hear me if I walk away from the podium? Okay, is that okay? So because I feel kind of locked in there. But so people in Australia said, "Can you come and help us start an Albinism Society here in Australia?" So I went down there when I was doing another shoot and went down and worked with these great kids. And the same thing in the UK. We went when they had a families conference. I went there and photographed some of their kids. And I started traveling worldwide. And I started getting calls from people saying, "Come here, can you come there?" So I started adding this into my schedule as a fashion photographer. And I would make sure that I meet these kids. And then sometime when I had some free time, I'd go off to other parts of the world to also meet other kids with albinism. I was actually in a family conference here in Philadelphia. It was a small local chapter of NOAA, which is the Albinism Support Group. And this there's about 50 people in the audience, and I gave my presentation, and this mom came up to me and she said, "You know, my son Randy, when he was a little boy, he'd come home from school in tears, as always, because kids always teased him, and I'd buy him an ice cream cone or a toy truck or a coloring book, and she said, and he's fine after that." She said, "But now he's in high school. He comes home from school, and I could see he's had a really rough day. I can see it in his eyes. I know my boy. And he comes home, and he walks right past me, goes up to his room, and slams the door, and I don't see him again till the next day." She said, "He's not going to let you photograph him because he has very low self-esteem. He's really, really shy." I'm thinking, okay, all right, well, where is he? And she points over to Randy. Now, Randy's standing there. He has like 4 girls standing around him. His pants are hanging down to here. He has big underwear sticking out. He has like 3 earrings in one ear and a tattoo. I'm like, "Oh, this kid's amazing." So I crawl over to Randy on my hand because I speak to moms every single day and dads every day who are terrified about the future of their kids because there are not a lot of positive role models out there, and they don't know what's going to happen with their kid who was just diagnosed with albinism. And though they know the term albino, and they're thinking this is going to be really scary, and there's isolation and teasing and bullying, and it's kind of freakish, and I'm scared, I'm terrified. But I looked around and said, "Randy, all they have to do is take one look at you, and they know there's going to be some challenges, but it's going to be okay." okay. I said, I know you don't want to be photographed. Your mother told me. He said, what? I said, well, I know you don't like to be photographed and you're kind of a little shy. He's like, what are you? I said, well, your mother said. He said, Rick, you have to understand something really important. I'm 16 years old. I don't talk to my mother. He said, I really want to be photographed. I want people to see that I'm proud of my albinism, but it doesn't define me. It's important to me, but I have other parts of my life that are important as well. And I'm in a really bad band. We really stink, but we're getting better. And I want to talk about my girlfriend. I want to talk about what I want to do when I go to college and what college I want to go to. And he said, so here, this is Randy. So you can see how shy he was. He really created something really important for positive exposure early days. The idea of networking, not only the images, but also the experiences. So as I traveled worldwide, I started doing more research about albinism. And, the incidence of albinism is about 1 in 20,000 worldwide. And this is my friend Gladys Mears. She's a Kuna Indian in the San Blas region of Panama, where it's the highest incidence in the world. It's 1 in 125. My friend Mary in Fiji, we went to Fiji because at the turn of the 19th century, a tribe could not hold their territory. Let's say it's somebody with albinism in a powerful political position. So in Fiji, albinism is revered in that community. So my friend Keke from India, now I photographed Keke in New Zealand. Her family, when she was 8 years old, she was getting death threats in her community in Delhi. So her family moved her to New Zealand, where she was thriving in school and safe. I've actually since started an albinism society in India. We started in Kerala and then moved all the way up through Delhi and met a lot of families of kids with albinism, and a lot of these kids have had really positive experiences. They were embraced by their community. So Keke's experiences were really quite negative. So we want to kind of make it clear that we're not making generalizations about a community or a culture. Keke's experiences have been, of course, negative, but we met a lot of kids that were embraced indeed by their communities. So my friend Suan is a lawyer. She's from Korea, and when she wanted to study law, they said, well, you don't see well enough to study law. You'll never be a successful lawyer. She's a fierce lawyer in Denver right now. She's pretty amazing. She also helped start the first albinism society in Korea. My friend Tom from China was adopted by a U.S. family a few years ago. My friend Harry from Puerto Rico. This is Natalia. Natalia and I started the first albinism society of Russia. Maizan and I started the first group and her sister and her mom, the four of us started the first albinism society in Malaysia. This is Kiara. Now Kiara, all she ever wanted to do was be a dancer. She woke up, she danced, she loved dance, she was so passionate about it. But she was told by her teachers, her dance instructors, her parents, even her friends that her vision was so poor that she wouldn't see well enough to be a dancer. She'll never follow the choreography. She'll never dance in chorus. They told her to find another dream. She said, absolutely not. She's New Zealand's Celtic dance champion, and she opened up a school in Auckland for dance for kids with visual impairment. So it really kind of illustrates not being told what you can't do, but showing the world what you can do indeed. This is my friend Lauren, who's from Australia. Lauren actually has a sister who has the same condition, who has albinism, but her sister chooses to dye her hair, her eyelashes, and her eyebrows. So even in the same family support system, you have very different ideas about self-acceptance. Lauren's also she's in Australia, so she was actually competed in The Voice Australia and was chosen to be on the SEALs team, which is pretty amazing. I spent a lot of time in Africa. The highest incidence of mortality associated with albinism is due to skin cancer. And the highest incidence of skin cancer and mortality associated with albinism would be in African countries where the lack of, the availability of sunscreen is just impossible. It's just prohibitively expensive. And sun protective clothing, of course, not available. So this mom actually walked 2 days to get to where we were in Bamako to get any information she could in West Africa, get any information she could to keep her baby alive. She saw people in her villages with these conditions having these great big open wounds and sores on their face from the sun damage and from the sun. So actually, when she found out how easy it was to keep her baby protected from the sun, wide-brimmed hats, long-sleeve shirts, shade, not playing in direct sunlight, she then started a rapid response team with the African Society for the Blind, where they would visit a family that's a newborn who was diagnosed with this condition. They would go and they would explain to the family exactly what albinism was and how to protect these babies from the damaging and the danger of the African sun. These are kids in South Africa, in the northern province of South Africa called Polokwane. I spent a lot of time traveling throughout African countries, and every kid that I photographed, I'd meet them in schools for the blind, because I figured as much that the resources for kids with visual impairment were better in schools for the blind, certainly. Turns out that that wasn't really why they went there. The teasing and the discrimination was so great in many of the countries that I went to that these kids didn't do well in mainstream schools, so to keep them safe, they went to schools for the blind. I actually traveled to Kenya, East Africa, where I met CK in the white hat, and she and I put together the first Albinism Society of Kenya, and our slogan was, "Don't be afraid, ask, A-S-K," and it was like we had about 400 people came to that first conference, and while we were creating this, I found out that CK really was. She went to, the first person I met went to a mainstream school. I said, "How is it possible? Nobody I met with albinism went to a mainstream school. How is it possible that you did?" And CK said, "Well, it's because of my twin sister, Daphne." And that's her twin sister. She said, "Daphne, if I couldn't read the blackboard, she would copy down the homework. If the print was too small in the book, she would read it to me." But she said, more importantly, when kids would tease me, Daphne would beat them up. Spent a lot of time in Tanzania and East Africa as well. In East Africa, on a sadder note, witch doctors are saying, "Bring me the bones of an albino, and I'll make a potion that will make you rich." So these kids are being murdered on their way home from school or pulled out of their homes at night and having their arms hacked off by machetes. And so we're creating all these opportunities and working with the government and health officials and the UN as well to create opportunities to kind of protect these kids. These kids are being sent from their families' homes to these schools that are patrolled, these kind of dormitories almost, where these kids, where they're patrolled by armed security men. So these kids, and these murders are still taking place, by the way. So we've created several programs to work with the organizations and so many incredible people on the ground in Tanzania. It's just a few bad people that are creating these problems and creating this hysteria, but there's so many wonderful people out there that are protecting these gorgeous kids. And there's an organization called Under the Same Sun that's based in Dar es Salaam that's been very active in making sure these kids are safe. These are brothers actually from that were in Shinyanga region. It's another school on the Burundi border. The other one of the visuals that we've created is kind of that we circulated about 350,000 of these that show that albinism doesn't just exist in that village. Quite often it's thought of as a curse. And so often these kids are just told that that's all something happened in that village that means that the bad things are going to go on and this kid's going to keep making things go bad. And so we created to show that these wonderful kids live all over the world. This is a great friend of mine, Siri. And when Siri was born, she was also in West Africa. When she was born, the father's family said she's cursed and doesn't belong in the family. So they put the mother and Siri out of the family, saying that she was cursed and doesn't belong here. So the mom, not knowing what else to do, didn't know anything about albinism, put Siri in the sun to make her dark like her brothers and sisters. So that's all sun damage. So we're creating all these programs through this to really tell these stories verbally, to really kind of to raise awareness about this genetic condition, albinism. I received an award for the Life magazine piece by this organization on the top called the Genetic Alliance. The Genetic Alliance is a coalition of all the genetic support groups worldwide. It's a great group. They're based in DC. And they gave me they gave me my clock. It was the Art of Reporting, where it was really cool. And then they said to me, the president at the time was a Dr. Janine Cody. And Dr. Cody said, I'm seeing all these photographs of people with albinism, it's incredible. But she said, but there's a universal message here. It's not about celebrating difference of just people with albinism. The universal message is about celebrating all differences. Would you come? I'm also the founder and director of this group, the Chromosome 18 Registry and Research Society. Would you come and speak to our families and take some photographs of our kids to celebrate our differences? I'm like, wow, what a cool idea. That's fantastic. Of course I will. Yes, definitely. So it was in San Antonio in a couple of weeks, and I ran back thinking, what the hell is a Chromosome 18 anomaly? I had no idea. I was a fashion photographer. So I went back to those medical textbooks, and I found these images of kids with chromosome 18 anomalies and chromosome anomalies. So it was trisomy 13s and 18s and tetrasomies and P minuses and Q minuses. And I'm thinking, wow, man, albinism was really easy. This is going to be rough. But I was in San Antonio. I went down to the auditorium where these kids were being entertained by a clown on stage making balloon animals. And I had all these images burned in my head. I walked into the auditorium and I was instantly surrounded by kids screaming with laughter. There were a lot of kids that had cleft palates and trachs and feeding tubes and mobility issues, but there were kids. There were kids first and foremost. These are the kids that I met. Remy. I met Pauline and Rebecca, amazing kids. That's Ellington. Elizabeth. Elizabeth's actually the daughter of Janine Cody, who was at the Genetic Alliance at the time. This is Deke. This is Sean. Now something happened that very first time. I went to that conference, I fell in love with all these kids and these great families. And I went back the next year, and then the next year, and then the next year. They're all their family conferences, always in the summer every year. And I would photograph kids like Sean every single year. Sean has tetrasomy 18. I would photograph him every single year. So now we have this database, accidentally, of Sean growing up over the last 10 years. And it's incredible. Then we're using this database to work with healthcare providers and going into medical schools and working with medical communities to kind of share these images to see Sean over time and all these great kids and how their condition changes over time. This is shown at the last conference that we worked in. It was kind of around that time, after going to my first conference, that I was invited by the National Human Genome Research Institute and the National Institute of Health to create an exhibition commemorating the People's Genome Celebration. It was going to be a big show, big party at the Museum of Natural History in DC, and they wanted to see albinism worldwide to show the heterogeneity, and this homogeneous diagnosis will be really cool and like great. But I said, I just had this really amazing experience at this Chromosome 18 conference. Why don't we invite, and I really literally illustrated, and they illustrated for me the universal applicability here. That this is about celebrating all differences. So why don't we invite many other groups to participate in this big show so we can all celebrate difference? And they agreed, and I worked with the Genetic Alliance to have this great outreach to all the different genetic support groups, and the first group that agreed to be part of this was the National Marfan Foundation. And this is a photograph of Marfan syndrome. Marfan syndrome, I'm sure you've seen these photographs. It's a connective tissue disorder. You grow very, very tall. But and I'm thinking, okay, I understand the importance of this photograph. I understand how important it is to show how Marfan syndrome presents itself. But I'm an artist. There has to be a better way to present this, including, though, the humanity. Let's put Billy in a swimming pool. Sorry, these are the other images, all the images from Marfan syndrome that I saw. And then that's what we decided to do with Billy. Is to continue to show how long his gorgeous arms are and show the scoliosis in various images and movement, but show the humanity first and foremost. Not make sure that we don't see a disease or diagnosis, but first and foremost we see Billy. This is Christopher. Now Christopher's photograph was the very first photograph you saw at the Smithsonian the night of the opening of the exhibition at the People's Genome Celebration. Christopher really was very opinionated about how he wanted to be photographed. He wanted to show his long fingers. He was very proud of his arms. And so everybody's an art director. He had really specific ideas how he wanted to do it. So we photographed the way he wanted. And as you walked into the Smithsonian, 8-foot square was his image. And it was fantastic. And this woman comes up to me and she said, my dad has Marfan syndrome and so do I. And we'd go to the beach. We'd cover up our bodies because we don't want people to see our long, skinny arms and our scoliosis. After meeting Christopher, I am so buying a bikini. So it's really about how people can see themselves also differently. So also through other organizations, we started working with all the kids with the same rhizopathies, or something that would be Noonan syndrome or cardiofasciocutaneous syndrome, neurofibromatosis, Costello syndrome. They all kind of work together. All the same researchers are together, scientists, and they're all their conferences, family conferences, are always held together in the same place, each at the same time. And so I would go and I meet all these great kids. But when I was first researching rhizopathies, these are, of course, again, the images that I saw. In my first Noonan syndrome conference, of course, I met the really cool girls at the Noonan syndrome conference. This is Cliffy with cardiofasciocutaneous syndrome from the same conference. Leah with neurofibromatosis from the same conferences. These are Danielle and Maggie living with Costello syndrome. Now, I was in the room when Maggie and Danielle met for the first time. They had never met anybody else. It was their first conference. They had never met anybody else with the same condition before. And it was incredible to see this instant bond. These kids became instant best friends, and they were inseparable that whole conference. And the next year I went back and they were inseparable again and again and again. They're always the best friends. And so the last conference, there they were again. Except this time the only change is now they're gangsters now, but they're still really great friends. They're best friends. It's my friend Jada with 22q11.2 deletion. My friend Jonathan with epidermolysis bullosa. It's my great friend Grace with Down syndrome. My friend Nadia. Nadia has a rare acromesomelic dysplasia, a rare form of dwarfism. And I met Nadia in Doha. She was a med student in Doha, the education city at Weill Cornell Medical School in Doha. And we had a big exhibition, and I met her, and I was there actually filming. I'm working with a film crew, a film company called Cartemquin Films that did Hoop Dreams many years ago, and then they've done The Interrupters, which is out now, and they're winning all these awards. And we've been shooting this documentary for several years now. And we met Dr. Nadia, and she was actually a resident, a medical student, and now she's doing her residency in Children's Hospital Dayton, Ohio. And she's also one of the lead characters in our documentary. This is the awesome Caleb, who's going to run for mayor one day. He's pretty amazing. He's actually everyone wants to run for president or be an actor. He's not sure which. He's not sure what he wants to do yet. One or the other. And and this was at my first LPA conference, or Little People of America conference last year in Dallas. I just came back. This summer was the LPA conference in DC. These are some of the great kids that I met there. It's Irina and Alexandra and Grace. Pete, now I could say things like arthrogryposis multiplex congenital. I'm a fashion photographer. I can say that because I got to hang out with PJ and a bunch of his family's friends living with the same condition at a family conference in Philadelphia. Again, it was the AMC conference in Philly. And I got to meet PJ and get to understand what arthrogryposis means because PJ can't use his hands because of the type of AMC that he has. So when he eats, his family calls it his Viking dive because he just kind of goes down to his food. But he goes down to his food, his plate of mashed potatoes, and he comes up. Then he goes into his plate of peas and he comes up. And then he chases his sisters around the table with a face full of mashed potatoes and peas trying to kiss them. You don't forget that stuff. So we've implemented a program through positive exposure. I go to these family conferences and take photographs every summer, but sometimes 15, 20 of them in a season. And I bring healthcare providers in training with me, nursing students, genetic counseling students, medical students, to come in, and we throw them in the daycare. At the end of the day, and they have poop on them, and they've got a little vomit on them, and they've got gum, and they've got things all, and they're incredible, they're so happy. It just changes everything because they see a whole different perspective on disease. They see beyond these kids, and they see beyond their visit in that clinic. And the families also get to have an opportunity to see their healthcare providers and their future healthcare providers in a new light as well. So that's PJ. My friend Alex, I met Alex at my first Joubert syndrome conference. I didn't know much about Joubert syndrome. Actually, not too many people do at this point. But I got there and I met Alex, and there was his one shoe, and I'm like, okay, and found out very quickly that it was only a personal preference and had nothing to do with Joubert syndrome. I was at Harvard speaking to med students at Harvard, and then they invited me. They have a clinic at Children's Hospital in Boston. And they said, can you come? Because we have this big family conference that's tomorrow. Would you come? And I'm like, of course I will. That'd be fantastic. I'm here for a day, so of course I'll come. And I didn't know much about SMA, but I knew that they had an involved clinic with SMA at Children's Hospital. So I went and I did my research and found out that it's progressive. You know, I didn't know much, and these kids die. A lot of these kids don't survive, and it was an advanced clinic, so a lot of these kids were really, really compromised and challenged. So and thinking, okay, this is going to be a really rough one. So I went there, about 60 families at this clinic, and I did my presentation, and I started taking photographs, and it was really hard because I'm thinking 6 months' time, who's going to be in this room? But as I'm shooting, I'm looking at the photographs as I'm shooting them, and they're all out of focus. And the reason they're out of focus is these little rotten kids spent the whole time trying to run me over in their wheelchairs. So they were kids, they were not victims, they were rotten 8-year-old kids, and they couldn't help themselves but being rotten 8-year-old kids. And then presenting that back to their families at the end of the day, all the siblings gave me a standing ovation. They're like, finally, they're no angels, these kids. And they were incredible, incredible kids. Great to see them not in that light as a victim or sick, but as these rotten kids, which is really cool, and they thought that was great. This is after running over my left and right foot. That's cool. This is Ghanem. I met Ghanem in the middle, in Oman, actually, in a village outside of Muscat. And we were giving this presentation to community members and community healthcare providers, and we were told, do not take any photographs because this is dangerous. It's, there's a lot of, there's a big to-do right now about cousins marrying cousins, and it's really difficult. So it's very uncomfortable, and we don't. Then photography in this will be definitely taboo. They haven't checked out your website yet. They don't know, so you're not. There isn't. They're going to be very isolated about this message about celebrating difference. So they said, do not take photographs. And I wasn't even in a room, I was kind of in a tent, so I was holding up photographs and talking about them. And then by the time I reached the fourth photograph, I think I was talking about Kiara. This woman just stopped me, screaming, saying, stop talking and start taking photographs of my beautiful son, Ghanem. She holds him up, and he has caudal regression syndrome. She said, let the world see him. Let the world see how beautiful this boy is. And all of a sudden, everybody made me stop, and then everybody was photographed. So what that really proved to me, which is really shocking, is that this isn't just because you're not linked in the positive exposure or the message or the internet. This is a human movement happening concurrently around the world where people don't want to be seen as a disease. They want to be seen as human beings first and foremost. This is Ghanem, was a very avid skateboarder. He's pretty awesome. My friend Tyler, I'm working on, I actually leave next. I go tomorrow to LA, and then I go straight to Marseille, where we have an exhibition on kids with congenital Nevus syndrome. This is one of our big heroes. This is Tyler. It'll be in Marseille, which is the Cultural Art Center of Europe now, and that's when the exhibition opens. I was at the Fragile X conference this summer. Fragile X, I'm working a lot with kids. It's a leading genetic marker for autism. These are some of these awesome kids at Fragile X. This is Matthew, who I met several years ago here in Pennsylvania, again at Elwyn Genetics, and then met him again in Florida. And these are some great kids from living in Staten Island, from Iran, but they live in Staten Island at the moment. Brother and sister, both with Fragile X. We're working with not only kids with physical differences, but this is Deirdre. She has Smith-Magenis syndrome. It's kind of like Tourette's syndrome, but she'll call out uncontrollably. So she has a lot of really bad, kind of like Tourette's syndrome, but instead of calling out uncontrollably, she'll have very violent temper tantrums. So you can just imagine how the families are perceived in their community or when she's in school, because people generally tend to remember her meltdowns and not the other days where she's really doing well. And Deirdre does have some really great days as well, and I think it's important that we see that and admire those moments of her. This is my great friend Sarah, who has Sturge-Weber syndrome. She's born with a birthmark bilaterally across her face. She's also in the documentary On Beauty. Sarah, when she was growing up, was teased so badly in school because of her birthmark, her family decided to homeschool her. And that's how she, from the second grade on. And she developed a technique though, so she didn't see people staring at her birthmark, she looked down. And so I thought that we have to do everything we possibly can to create opportunities so that this kid can look up and put her head up and feel amazing and how incredible, gorgeous, and amazing person that she is. So my friend Kaylin has the same condition. Kaylin came into my studio to be photographed, very different than Sarah, walked into my studio to be photographed, in a little crop top and a clip-on navel ring. She was so awesome. She was 14 years old. She's jumping all over the place. We're taking a million photographs. We had a blast. At the end of the shoot, her mom calls me and she said, Kaylin never talks to me about school. Because she knows that if I hear kids are teasing her, I'm going to come in the next day swinging a baseball bat. And that just makes things worse for her, so she says nothing. But on our way home from your studio, she said, Mom, kids tell me I'm ugly every single day. They tell me I'm a freak and I'm a monster, and I believe them until today. Then she mobilized me. She got me to go to her school in New Jersey to speak to 400 freshman students. And she was on stage in her little Madonna-esque headphones screaming, "What is normal?" So she created an equation that everything that we do at Positive Exposure is based on, which is self-acceptance equals self-esteem equals self-advocacy. So it's empowering these kids with a positive sense of who they are and then giving them the tools that they need to change the way their community sees their difference, to see beyond that difference to our shared humanity. One of the programs that we started, one of the other reasons, other programs that we created was a program called the Pearls Project. I worked with Coley, who has Turner syndrome, my friend Ashley, Friedreich's ataxia. Very vocal kids. They have a lot of opinions. Friedreich's ataxia is a rare form of muscular dystrophy. These kids have really great things to say, and they didn't want to just be thought of seen as. They actually didn't want people just to see her wheelchair and wanted to talk about, this is Ariel and her sister Sarah. So we created a program called the Pearls Project, which is kind of a safe online blog. These kids you access it through Positive Exposure's website. You're given a username and a password. And these kids talk about their lives. They talk about, basically a little bit about their condition, but for the most part, we'll blog about, Xbox video games and best friends and movie videos and music videos and TV shows and things like that. So they kind of, again, providing opportunities to really get a better sense of what life is like from their unique perspective. So, and it looks very interactive. They can post photographs and video links, but we do all the posting. It all comes to Positive Exposure offices and an email, and we post it. So it looks very interactive, but it's a very safe and secure environment. I want to introduce you to my friend. This is Byron. I think he may be next. Hopefully, he is. Well, that's the Pearls Project. That's one of our new page on the Pearls Project. That's great. That's Rebecca. So this is Byron. He's one of our bloggers as well. He's one of our ambassadors. So this is Byron.
My name is Byron. I live in the DC area. I'm 14. When I was 10 months old, I had a left hemispherectomy. I had the left half of my brain removed because I have something called Sturge-Weber syndrome. I wear a brace on my right leg and right arm. I only see out of the right side of each eye. So sometimes it's harder for me to see things on the right side. So playing sports can be frustrating because I might not see a ball coming. I didn't see that.
So it's really these amazing kids using their character, their personality, their sense of humor to really kind of give people an opportunity not to be afraid of a certain condition or a difference, but to see beyond that. And that's the awesome Byron. So my friend, so we had such great success with the very first pilot of the Pearls Project. The New York Times did a big article on it, and then we decided it was such a success. We then took these blogs and we started working with kids that were in elementary schools and middle schools, and we're using these blogs and they are ambassador stories. Pearl stands for Positive Exposures Ambassadors Real Life Stories, and these great kids are blogging and talking, but we're using these stories cross curricular in classrooms in schools. So it goes from science to creative writing to music to art to drama to poetry classes, where these kids are really, and they're in the schools and we're encouraging the audiences that are reading these blogs to ask questions, and of course their questions come to Positive Exposure via email, and when appropriate, and they're all so far to date, so 3 years now, they've always been appropriate. We then post those and to the significant ambassador, and then he responds, and it's been pretty amazing how we've really kind of creating this dialogue, because we really do believe that Disability Day, although it's great, or Diversity Awareness Week, I think we all deserve more than that day or that week. It should be in our dialogue every single day, from the moment a kid starts school to the day he retires from the workforce. It should be in all of our languages constantly. We should just be aware and just absorb the idea of diversity. This is Emery. She's one of our great ambassadors. This is Simone. We've actually added an international component to this. This is Simone. He lives in Genoa. We've actually also added other programs to the Pearls Project, not just using the individuals themselves, but their families. This is a Mother of Pearls project where it's moms that are blogging and are ambassadors of their moms of kids with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And we started off working with the moms, and they were doing their ambassador and their pearls and their blogs, and we were sharing that with OTs and PTs or future in training. These are future OTs and PTs that we're going to be working with their gorgeous kids because they're going to be working their kids in part of their kids' health care. But these women are not blogging as primary caregivers. They're blogging as women. They're blogging as wives, as daughters, as human beings. People really with their own ideas about like taking care of their sons, but also looking after themselves as well. So and really sharing that the blogs that they've posted are like their poetry. They're so beautiful and so powerful. So we're creating other opportunities for public to understand, and not just healthcare providers, but to create exhibitions that are public, that go public. I've had lots of fancy shows in galleries, Times Square, all over, but now we're taking these photographs and putting them in public spaces or public arenas like airports. Or this is a Hunter syndrome that we've created, a very syndrome-related specific exhibition, really giving people an opportunity to learn something about Hunter syndrome, where it's a mucopolysaccharidosis, or MPS, and they see these kids, and instead of walking away, they're kind of drawn in by these images of joy and images of just excitement and energy, and once they pull in, then they read, they understand more, but it gives people an opportunity, because I know we need more than the opportunity to either stare at somebody who's different or look away. There have to be alternatives to that, and I think the exhibitions, they just will give you an opportunity to kind of look in a different way, to steady your gaze long enough to see beauty, and once that beauty washes over you, everything changes. So this exhibition launched in Times Square in New York, in Grand Central Station in New York, then went to the streets of Warsaw, and then into Berlin, and then was in a big mall in Moscow, which I was there for the opening for that, and then this is in Moscow. So we're just creating opportunities, bring it to the public, and create these exhibitions that really give people an opportunity to see beyond disease, to see beyond difference or diagnosis. We have an exhibition right now that's part of the Genome Unlocking Life's Code at the Smithsonian in DC. We created an exhibition that with 400 visitors at the Smithsonian as part of this big multi-million-dollar exhibition. It's just putting humanity in this genetic or this genome idea in this genome exhibition. So we gave 4 simple tests of all these wonderful visitors at the museum. Can you curl your tongue? Do you have a dimple? Do you have a widow's peak, etc.? And then you get a number from 1 to 16. And on a huge wall, it's called the genetic trait tree at the Smithsonian, are all the people with the shared number 1s and all the shared number 2s and number 3s. But you see within within those numbers the diversity within the shared genetic trait. So it really just kind of very subtly adds all these gorgeous kids, and everyone's part of this whole thing. We have kids with albinism featured in there as well, but they're not there illustrating albinism. They're just there as part of humanity. They're there because they can curl their tongue, or they have a dimple. My great friend Grace is part of that exhibition with Down syndrome. She's not representing Down syndrome, she's just representing Grace, part of humanity, the slice of mankind. So this is at the Smithsonian. Now it's there for the next 15 months, and then it goes on tour for about 5 years. I'm not sure exactly. Of course, the film on beauty, there's Sarah, Nadia, and that's Jane. And then there's another piece that we're creating called Frame. We talked a little bit about it earlier before I started the presentation, called Faces Redefining the Art of Medical Education. There are so many pieces out there. There's a film that I saw called The Pearls of Dysmorphology. There's a lot of medical stuff out there where it's really the specimen, the kid up against the wall in the doctor's office. But we really kind of create opportunities for the patients themselves, the individuals living with a variety of differences themselves, to present their own condition to their healthcare providers and healthcare providers in training. So so far we've done about 6 different genetic conditions, and I'd like to just share with you one of them that we've done so far. This is a piece that will all be kind of search and interactive that you can get to through the positive exposure site, and references. There'll be like a trailer for Marfan syndrome, and then there'll be various tenets of what Marfan syndrome is or how it presents itself, but all presented by these gorgeous kids and their families and these individuals, so you understand. It's kind of remembering again arthrogryposis multiplex congenita. It's PJ first. So this is Pectus excavatum. I'm sorry.
It's my birthday.
Oh, sorry.
It's my birthday.
My name's Alex.
And I'm Ezra.
And this is Cassie of Penelope.
Hello. Hello.
And Cassie was born with a genetic syndrome called Marfan syndrome.
We wanted to show you a feature Cassie was born with. As you can see, Cassie's chest sinks inward toward the middle. This is called Pectus excavatum. But Penelope, what is it that you and Cassie call it?
Target.
Why do we call it a target, Cass?
Because Penelope likes fish and flattery. And she used to laugh all the time when I put water in it. That's what made her that. Can you take a picture of it?
Oh yeah, I'm doing it right now. I'm making a movie of it.
So it really is this great opportunity, again, for these kids to be empowered to talk about their differences, but also to help train healthcare providers and healthcare providers in training from the mouths of these gorgeous kids. So this past summer we did LPA, or we did achondroplasia dwarfism at the conference in DC, and then also we did chromosome 18 at the chromosome 18 conference in Savannah. So far to date, we have Marfan, Sturge-Weber, chromosome 22, or DeGeorge syndrome, Joubert syndrome, and Turner syndrome. So and it's growing, so it's going to be pretty exciting. So the whole everything that we do is based on this philosophy: is to change how you see how you change. I actually went to a conference. I was at a conference and speaking to a bunch of students at the Siboney School for the Blind in Johannesburg. And the idea is change how you see how you change. Well, these kids were blind, so I'm thinking, okay, well, let's kind of bring this in. It's about how you feel, and we started talking about the ways that I present and how I see. And these kids have such vision, even though there is no vision in many of these kids. But there's vision, and there's thoughtfulness, and there's insightness, and they're insightful and powerful and passionate. And I was like, okay, well, let's talk about this. I'm a fashion photographer. This is how I celebrate difference. How can you celebrate difference? And one kid says, well, I want to be a writer. I'm like, that's fantastic. We can write articles about it. You can be powerful and raise really powerful ideas and thoughts in your community. Another kid said, I want to be a doctor. I'm like, that's amazing. You're going to demand tremendous respect in your field and in your community because you're physicians. Another kid says, well, I want to be a community nurse. I was like, that's fantastic. Same thing. You're healthcare. You're going to run the country. This is amazing. This is wonderful. And another kid said, well, I want to be a policeman. I'm like, blind, guns, probably not a great idea. He said, no, I want to be a security guard. I'm like, well, that's good because he was really big. I'm like, that's great. In the middle of all this, we're laughing and having a great time. This little girl tugs on my pants, and she says, we have a choir. I'm like, a choir? Because I know, in my experience in South Africa, school choirs are how you become, they're so popular. It's how you become mega famous in South Africa. I'm like, really? You're in a school choir? Are you guys any good? She's like, well, we write our own music. I'm like, that's fantastic. That's amazing. Have you performed? She's like, oh, no, we're not allowed to perform because, we don't perform because we're disabled. And I'm like, nah, I don't think there are any rules about that. So let me hear you sing. And they performed for me, and they were amazing. And I videotaped them while they were performing, and then I sat down with the principal afterwards, and I made little iMovies out of them on my DVDs, and we just started, I picked up the local newspaper. On the back of the local newspaper were 15 different listings for school choir competitions. So we just entered them in 15 different school choir competitions, sent them all out. About 10 months, 11 months later, I get a call from the principal of the school. I'm back in my office in New York City. Phone rings, I answer, and he's screaming on the phone. I'm like, what? He's like, you're not going to believe this, but we were just invited to be the guest choir at the next national competition in Johannesburg at the National Auditorium. There are going to be 10,000 people in the audience. I'm like, that's fantastic. He's like, no, it's not. I'm like, why? He's like, because they've never performed in front of anybody else, and they won't go unless you come back and go with them. So I'm like, oh no. I said, well, we don't have any money at Positive Choice. So I called all my friends and said, I have to go, and they all put a kitty together, and off I went. So I would like to share with you a little video of the first time that I met them performing at the Siboney School, and then my second visit where it's our final dress rehearsal before we're going in to perform for the first time in front of an audience, and it's an audience of 10,000 people. So let's see if I can pull this up. Here he is. It's going to be loud at first. So let me lower that up. Let's go. Sorry, 1 second. Enter full screen. So the Siboney School for the Blind. This is the first time I saw them. So this is their second trip, final dress rehearsal. They're terrified. So these are like the real ambassadors for change. This is back at the school. These kids are going to change the way the world sees. They're different. I went back to the school recently, and they're meeting me in the lobby of the school building was a 12-foot trophy. These kids actually went back competed and won the national competition. So these kids are walking in the schools now where they used to have bottles thrown at them and they're getting standing ovations. So it really is about creating all these ambassadors, using your own talents to celebrate difference, to see beyond difference to our shared humanity. It's incredible to see how these gorgeous kids have, and then once they realized how good they were and that they were recognized for being good, and they see their reflection and they look in that mirror and they know it's good and it's not any longer segregated or something to be afraid of or ashamed of, but something to be proud of. So actually going through, so there's this whole incredible movement right now in many of the countries that I've worked with in South Africa and in East Africa, and now moving into West Africa, where these kids they're creating, in support and solidarity of what's going on in Tanzania, they're creating all these dance troupes and these singing choirs and these musical troupes and art shows and galleries, all using the visual arts to get out there and create opportunities to raise awareness about what albinism is, and then they're taking it further and looking into all differences. So it really is, they're really kind of getting this, and again, it's not something that positive exposure did or I helped plant the seed. It's happening concurrently. Again, it's this human movement. There's this documentary that's coming out on beauty. I'd like to, if I can, I don't know if I can pull it up because I realized I didn't pop it in there, but this is the one where I do have to apologize a little bit because I do curse in this, but only once, and my mother's furious with me, but let's see if I can pull this up. This actually documentary comes out, and probably it's going to be, we're going to start entering it in this is the Positive Exposure website, by the way. It'll start hitting the film festival circuit soon, and then it'll probably be out to the public probably in March or April. Let's see, on beauty. Oh, sorry, it should be like right in front of me. Here it is. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. Here it comes, and I apologize in advance for cursing. It's a bit bigger.
People stare. Are we really so different and not like you that you have to stare?
For me, I want to become a doctor, so I need to be able to get into residency. That's my biggest challenge right now, to get into residency. All I need is a stool. People might think, oh, my challenge is short stature, but honestly, maybe that's your challenge, but I'm fine.
Big check for a photograph. All fashion professions are diabolic. They're not a breeding ground for people with hearts or souls.
I'm looking at the camera and I'm thinking, I don't even have to be here. This is not what I want to be doing.
I had never thought of the power of a photograph as in the impact it would have in someone's life. We are not ghost-like, we are just human beings.
But I can assure you that no one has ever walked into the doctor's office looking like this. Looking like a carrying an affordable black bar. Train nurse physicians to see beyond the disease.
Nothing standard will ever be beautiful. Almost boring and uninteresting.
I've given up on the idea of a fashion magazine running photographs of bricks. And I hope I'm wrong.
Nobody jumped on board. People were still looking at this as an art. They didn't understand that this was a human movement.
It was the first time I had somebody tell me how beautiful he was. He took pictures of him the way I saw him. Not the way everybody else saw him, but the way I saw him.
Often when I'm photographing someone that difference, somebody will come and see the photographs and say, you're really capturing their inner beauty. And I'm like, fuck inner beauty. These are gorgeous.
Sorry.